Welcome to Creative Culture. My name is Steve, and this is a podcast all about the endless ways people express their creativity through art, music, performance, crafts, writing, cooking. I'm always looking for interesting creative outlets to share with you. Lloyd Barnes is a professional magician who develops and creates magic illusions for magicians all over the world. He also showcases his work on his YouTube channel, where he gives detailed tutorials on how to make your own tricks. These are some seriously clever tricks. I'm kind of blown away by the ingenuity involved in creating them. It's really amazing what you could do with some playing cards, an X-Acto knife, and a little bit of elastic thread. So, I mean, basically anything.
And too much time on your hands.
Right. Of course, you'll probably need to develop some crazy sleight of hand skills. So, block out the next decade or so working on that. But if you've ever wondered how magicians can tear up and restore a signed card, pass a pencil through a dollar bill, or perhaps you want to gain some insight on how David Copperfield might make the moon vanish. I don't think he's actually going to make the moon vanish, but we'll see. You can check out Lloyd's YouTube channel. That would be just very bizarre. Lloyd's channel is a ton of fun. Lloyd, welcome to the show. And wow, what's the deal with that moon anyway?
What an intro. What an intro. Oh, I almost believed some of it. Yeah, the moon stuff. Well, I hope he doesn't, because the tides would be affected.
That would pretty much fuck everything up for us.
Yeah, we'd be
humanity would be doomed.
Sea, so I would drown. And then polar bears would take over the earth, apparently, or something. I don't know. But yeah, so wow. Man, what an intro. Thank you.
You're welcome. I remember when David Copperfield, I feel like David Copperfield has been around my whole life. I think he has. But he's like, I remember watching him so many years ago when he made the Statue of Liberty disappear. Yeah. And that was like a big thing. And I saw recently, and I don't know if this is true or not, maybe you have some insight on this, that trick is kind of genius. It was like he put the entire audience on a huge rotating platform. And it just like slowly turned their vision, and they didn't know it because there was a lot of loud music and rumbling playing, so they couldn't feel the movement of it. And then he pulls the curtain down, the Statue of Liberty is gone. Yeah,
there's so many.
Do you think that's how it worked?
I wouldn't want to say just purely because it's not my trick, but there's a saying that says the best tricks are always the easiest. But Teller from Penn and Teller says is actually, like, the best tricks are the ones that have the most insane amount of, I'm paraphrasing, but, the ones where you go to extreme lengths actually are the ones. So if there's a plinth that rotates and people are on that, and all this crazy mechanical stuff going on, then, that's super complicated, and that's probably the best way to do it.
Because nobody would ever think of that.
Yeah, why would it seems like the most lateral way of doing it, like the most opposite or juxtapositional method of doing it, because you'd assume you'd obscure the thing instead of moving the audience. But I put a video up on my channel. I went on the internet when David Copperfield announced a couple of months ago that he was going to make the moon vanish in February. I was looking over the internet and I seen comment sections on news article websites, like general news articles, out there in the Muggle land. And there was some hilarious comments from people guessing how he would do it. So I made a video and was like, here are the 3 craziest theories on how David Copperfield, how people think he's going to vanish the moon, right? So I put this video up and I made some animations, and some of the theories were pretty clever. And one in particular talked about how the week of time that he's blocked off from performing live, because he performs twice a day in Vegas, 365 minus a day or two for holidays. But there's a week blocked off. And in that week that he's blocked off, somebody looked at the lunar cycle and found that the moon on one of those days is a new moon, meaning that it's obscured by the earth, or it's out of view, when you don't see the light of it. Anyway, so it's pretty clever. I put the video up and I thought, after I put it up, I thought, I wonder if I've made a faux pas here. If somebody's guessed how he's going to do it correctly, kind of spoils the trick by putting the video up. So I put the video up, I waited a few days, and I took my wife to Paris for her birthday. It's not as posh as you think, because we're so close to Paris here. And I got an email at 4 a.m. from David Copperfield's team.
No way.
Yeah. And I was like,
wow.
oh God. And I thought this is either going to be like a cease and desist or something else. Anyway, without divulging it, it was just they were giving me props for the video. They'd seen it, they loved it, and everything from there. So, but I thought, oh no, they may be asking me to not keep the video up. But it turns out they were all behind it because, apparently he's been working on that trick for 30 years, his whole team.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine like 30 years worth of work could be guessed so quickly by somebody in a comment section on like the New York Times or, who knows? Time will
Well, and 30 years ago, there wouldn't have been in this level of discourse, on the internet for people to kind of bat it around and figure it out. But see, I don't know if he does it during the new moon. I mean, that's pretty easy for anybody to, if they know the day he's actually doing it, to say, well, it was a new moon. It wasn't visible to begin with, so you're not really making it disappear. I don't think that, it seems to me that's too easy to like just figure out.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's why I wasn't too worried about sharing these ideas because it would be too obvious. And, he's not going to do that. But I wonder if he could use that in some way to play into it like a red herring. Like everyone knows no moon is visible in the sky tonight. So we've sent a ship up. We're going to live stream a feed of the moon from this part of the earth. Something crazy. But when you have $1 billion on a private island and your name's not Jeffrey Epstein, you can do anything you want.
You really can, right? It's kind of amazing. I remember as a kid, and this is probably the experience of a lot of people, you get into magic because you get like one of those magic kits, that comes in a box for kids, and you've got like the cup and balls and everything. But one thing I learned over the years is that so much magic comes down to two things: black velvet and mirrors. And it's like, it seems like mirrors play such an important part, even though it's kind of, you think of that as maybe a cliche thing, but it's true. And I've made a few magic tricks myself on my YouTube channel, and it's what it is. Mirrors, I think, and black velvet.
Because mirrors are really like the original screen, like video screen. You can essentially have a feed of something that looks better than a video could look ever because it's just real, it's there. There's no pixelation or anything. You just got to get creative with your angle. So it's really the original like TV screen feed. And of course, like if you have an extra screen, you can make it look like certain things. And a lot of magic does come down to like the basics. And I think my favorite part about the methods in magic is that, like for example, people say that I shouldn't in particular teach tricks on YouTube. And the difference between teaching a trick on YouTube and seeing the trick done live is that a good magician will be able to fool the audience in real life, even if they know how the trick works. So often like a lot of tricks that you'll see performed are using like, the same methods that you would learn from a children's magic kit on day one. But the difference in entertainment and foolability is the person performing the trick and the practice they put in. On my channel, I do a weekly segment called Fool Her, or Fool, it's like I'm saying Fool Her. And I perform tricks on my wife. And as I've been married to her, we've been together like 6 years, married for 5, I think. She gets brought into the fold. There's no way around it. She learns how pretty much all the tricks are done. And so what I found is been a really like fascinating exercise, which not a lot of people get the luxury of having, is that I need to find new and creative ways to trick her, to fool her, using the same material that she's seen time and time again. And it's kind of like, some people often just think like, I'm going to learn how to do the trick and I'm going to fool someone, and then they just repeat that, they rinse and repeat it. But like really having to like hammer get all the creases and the fine details out and think, how can I keep using this in a new way over and over? Eventually you end up in like this blue ocean territory with these ideas for new tricks or new methods that no one's gotten to before, because you're trying to find a way to fool your wife for the 1000th time using a thumb tip. It's like, how can I fool this person again? And it's no reflection on my wife. She sees through most stuff, but it can be sometimes fun just to absolutely obsess over something so much that you end up sort of breaking through into like a new creative ground. If that makes sense.
It really does come down to the presentation, because it seems like there must be, like you said, so many similar approaches to magic tricks. So I watch, like, Penn and Teller are my favorite. And so I watch the Fool Us, that's their show, where they have magicians and they try to guess how the tricks are done. Do most magicians pretty much know how everything is done?
Yeah, there's a certain sort of communal level of understanding of most tricks, because like I said, they're all sort of based off the same basics. There's only, there's maybe, say for example, there's 10,000 different sleight of hand moves you can do with a deck of cards, right? From making one look like it vanishes to changing color and all these things. There could be 10,000, maybe more, of these sleights, we call them. But the reality of it is magicians maybe use 15 sleights as their daily bread. The ones they use every day, every performance. Globally, it's pretty much the same 15 sleights. So when you see, that's with cards, the same goes for coin tricks and other things and phone tricks. When you generally, what you're seeing when you watch another magician perform is then using the basics, like chords with guitars or certain joins with woodwork. You could have, I'm not an expert at all, but I'm guessing there's like thousands of different clever creative joins for corners, but when you come to it, you only use like the same handful every time you make things, right? So it's kind of like that. It's only when someone comes out of the left field and tries to fool a magician. So normally when you perform to the public, you just use your basics. But like the Fool Us format is magicians trying to fool magicians. So sometimes they'll do red herrings where they make you think as a magician that they're using a move that everyone does, but actually they're doing it in a different way. So if you say, you're using that, they can go, no, I did it differently. And it's one of those like sort of gray area loopholes. Like, yeah, but you got to the same destination. And I know you did something, so...
Yeah. Is that fun for you to watch that show and try to play along and try to guess? And are you usually able to figure it out the way that Penn and Teller do? Because they kind of have like a little conference, and then and one thing that's interesting is that they will name some of the effects they use. There must be a long history of some of these effects. They'll say that's the Gambini effect or whatever. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm saying. But there seems to be like this rich history of effects that are just kind of used again and again.
Yeah, there is. So twofold. I love watching it. My favorite. So most people think the magicians don't like being fooled, but the thing that got me and most other my peers is that feeling of wonder, like that feeling of having no idea how it's done. Because the longer you get, it's like that poison pill. The longer you're in magic, the more secrets you know. It's like that drug fix, they say when people do heroin, they can never, you're chasing that high that can never be, found again. And it's like, and I think the thing that got me into magic is that feeling of, okay, either you just like, there's a glitch in the matrix or mirrors, so the more often we can feel that, it takes us back to the reason like why it all began. And then going on to like the catalog of tricks, there's certain, we call them plots. So there's certain plots that are used. And this is kind of like what I mentioned earlier about revisiting the same thing over and over again to find something new eventually. So, for example, there's a card trick called Triumph where half the deck is face up and half is face down, and you shuffle them together. And the trick is that the deck, magically, all cards correct themselves. So they go like this. And that's like that would be called a plot in magic. There's a plot where the card comes to the top. Every time you put the card in the middle, it magically jumps to the top. So yeah, all these like mostly all of these tricks in Fool Us and that what magicians do to other magicians is normally taking a classic plot like a Triumph or like a Lincoln Rings effect and doing it in a way that the magician hasn't seen before, which is the fun stuff. Sometimes
that's got to be very satisfying to fool another professional,
Yeah,
I would imagine. Yeah,
100%.
So I guess the question comes down to then how. What are the ethics as far as, is it still kind of taboo to like teach? I mean, you're doing it on your YouTube channel, and I know when I had just made a couple of woodworking illusions, and I heard from some magicians who told me, well, you really shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, well, I don't think that what I'm doing is pretty common knowledge. It's not really hard to make a box that makes something disappear. But I don't know, is that still kind of the ethic?
Well, there's two kind of, there's a first of all, there's like a main differential between them. So there's exposure and then there's education. So exposure would be if we went and watched David Copperfield make the moon vanish and we figured out how it was done and then made a video purposefully exposing it, that would be put into the exposure category because it's not anyone else's trick to teach. It's Copperfield, him and his team worked hard on it. Then so it's up to them if they want people to know the method or not, even if people get it right. And then education is where I come into it. And that's because I create my own tricks. That's how I pay my bills. That's how I, feed the family. And I'm at liberty to create my tricks and teach them because no one has any ownership to tell me not to. And you do get into some heated debates with some magicians, some more like the people that are set in their ways and don't, understand the internet. It's like toothpaste can't go back in the tube stuff. But this, my thing is that because part of the way that I make a living is I sell my tricks to other magicians. And a lot of these people would buy my trick. You get an instructional video with it and they'd watch it, or they wouldn't, or they wouldn't buy it, but they would figure it out. And then they would teach my trick on YouTube anyway. So my problem, my catch-22 was is that like, I may as well teach my tricks myself. At least people can learn them the correct way. Because these people would pinch my ideas, they would teach them and they would teach them incorrectly. And then I'd see hundreds of people going out there doing all my tricks wrong. So I thought, well, at least learn it from the original source anyway. And since they're my creations, I'm not stepping on anyone's toes by, it's my decision to put them out there. And so that's kind of where it is. But if I was teaching other people's tricks and I didn't get permission from them, that's when the magic community starts to frown upon it.
Right. I mean, and it's pretty cool. I encourage everybody listening to this podcast to check out your YouTube channel, because even if you don't do magic, which I'm sure most of the people watching your YouTube channel aren't magicians, but they just love to see how you do these things, because what you'll do is you'll show a card trick and at the very beginning, so you see how it looks and you're kind of mind blown, and then you go through actually cutting apart cards and applying thread and actually showing how to make. You could make one. Anybody could make one of these. Well, I say anybody because it looks like some of those are like next level patience on cutting out cards and little holes, but it's just kind of crazy that you can make a trick to send a Sharpie through a card and then slide it along and just have it so seamless and look so real. But I think it's really commendable that you're able to do that without any kind of real blowback.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the biggest struggle for the channel is continuously coming up with new ideas that haven't been done before. Because when I look at almost that, I think that's the niche that I've carved for myself, and I've spent like my whole, like, I'm 35. I started working in magic at age 16, so 19 years of my life, and the focus has been, for my career at least, is the creative side. So constantly coming up with new material, and that's been the hardest thing, because not all, but a large portion, the majority portion of other YouTube channels that teach magic, it's either not their material or it's derivative, and it's their own thing if they want to do it. But for me, the thing that I at least find the hardest and I'm proudest of is just at least bringing my own like ideas to the table each time. But how long I can go before the well dries up?
You're not making like huge stage illusions. You're mostly focused on coins, money, cards, close-ups, and sleight of hand. And to me, this is the most interesting type of magic. I think there's basically two types of magic. You can set me straight here if I'm wrong, but there's like the big stage productions, and then there's close-up magic, and which is sleight of hand. And to me, the sleight of hand has such an art to it, because it's so much practice goes into that, and you're right there. There's no room for error in these, but I like the way that you combine your skills using sleight of hand with card tricks with the gimmicks that go along with them. So I think that's just amazing.
I always feel like the best tricks close up, or not with being hyperbolic, but like the best tricks close up use that, like you said, the combination, that synergy of it's greater than the sum of all its parts when you take a prop or a gimmick and you use a bit of sleight of hand at the same time. And it's almost like you find certain tricks where the way it's put together, it makes the audience, it cancels out how the audience think it's done. So it kind of ties them in a knot, because they think, oh, well, maybe there was a secret mirror in his hand, or there's a secret spring. But because you've done one part of it with sleight of hand only, they go to look inside your hand and your hand's empty. So then they go, well, no, there's no trap door, there's nothing secret going on, but really there was, but you used your sleight of hand to hide that. And then so you kind of tie them in this, like it's like the knot that tightens itself. The more they think about it, the harder it is to undo the secret. And that's where I find like the most exciting ones sort of seem to fit.
Do you think that close-up magic, though, has such a high risk for the magician? To me, it seems like that would be way higher risk than doing a large stage production, because there's just no room for error. Somebody is going to pick it up if they see you palming a coin or a card, and you're either going to see it or you're not.
Yeah, well, yeah, I believe so. The risk factor is infinitely more. Although, if it goes wrong on stage, you do have 10,000 more eyes watching you, so you do have the risk reward factor there. But one thing I used to do, and I still do it now, but a big thing I used to do as an exercise, and every trick that I created, I would. Once I'd had the idea of how I was going to do it and I was happy with it, I'd then force myself to think of a new way of doing it that used a different method. There's been a few times when I'd go out and perform and someone would say, oh, I know how you did that. You held two cards together as one. Mm-hmm. And to combat that, I would think, okay, well, the next time I do it, if I am going to get caught and someone's going to guess that, hopefully they don't, but if I do, I need to have something that can go, oh, okay, oh, you thought I was doing this. Well, let me prove to you that I'm specifically not doing this. And then you have, so it's like multiple methods. And so it's a fun exercise, so that if you do get put in those positions where you're caught out, the risk, and you get caught doing it, you have a backup plan that can sort of save the day.
How common is that for somebody to like be one of those guys who has to like call out? And I mean, it's basically like a personal heckler in a way, I would think.
It is, yeah. That's the term magicians use, is heckler. You tend to get it more if people have had a drink, and you tend to find that it's normally like the alpha male of the group, the guy who's trying to impress everyone else. But there's a few ways you can handle those people. I find for me, with my personality is I'm quite chilled out. I don't drink or anything. I tend to feel that those type of people are actually interested in it. And if they're interested in it, I find that instead of trying to fool them, by letting them into the fold a little bit, they then stop and they become like your wingman. So sometimes if I have a heckler, maybe when they're going to grab a drink, I'll say, oh, next trick, I'm going to make you think of the six of spades, but really it's in my pocket, but play along. And now because they're in on it and they feel like they're going to be a part of it, they suddenly become like just the perfect assistant. So you say, hey, think of a card, and he goes, oh, you'll never guess this. And I'll say, it's in my pocket, and you pull it, and they just feel like they're behind the curtain, and now they're not combative. Is that the word?
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of it you have to deal with, and this probably goes back to having alternative ways of doing a trick, is just kind of mistake management and dealing with that. Because if you're performing, I mean, even Penn and Teller, they perform practically every night. I saw them at the Rio and it was fantastic, but they even at their level, they're bound to have things happen and screw up, but I think that they just have ways of dealing with that.
I think Penn and Teller are in a really brilliant position because they don't try and convince their audience that what they do is real. In fact,
right.
a large portion of what they show is the part of their show is how they do it, right?
But then they pull the rug out from under you.
Exactly. Yeah. So for them, if something goes wrong, it's not breaking it's not breaking the overall illusion of the show that, oh, this person, Copperfield says that he can really fly, that he's really magic. If one of his tricks goes wrong, it's going to be in headline news. David Copperfield falls flying, blah, blah, blah. But if Penn and Teller, tried to fly, they would tell you, first of all, this is bullshit. Pardon my French. Yeah. We're not really flying. So I know if that goes wrong, people would just they'd probably make fun of it. So the only people that get affected by tricks going wrong are the ones that try and sell you on the idea that what they're doing is authentic, because when it goes wrong, the veil has been dropped.
Well, I've read a couple of Penn Jillette's books, like probably 3 of them, and I don't know if it was in Every Day is an Atheist Holiday or God No, or which one it was, but he talks about this a lot, how he really doesn't like these magicians who claim what they're doing is real, because to him, it's kind of taking away from all of the hard work and craft and time and practice that actually goes into perfecting these tricks, and to just blow it off and to try to convince people that what you're doing is real seems so disingenuous.
I fully agree. It's funny. They say about magic, it's like the only art form, if you're trying to pretend that you can do it for real, they say it's like one of the only art forms where you practice for years to hide your skill. Whereas juggling, comedy, dancing, it's an art form, that it's an entertainment. You're actively trying to show how good you are. Whereas magic, you're trying to do the opposite. And I can't think of many that do that. But yeah, it is a bit of a disservice. I don't like to tell people I'm just using sleight of hand. I don't like to tell people that it's real. I kind of like to just sort of leave it open to interpretation most of the time. Just because I don't want to... Yeah. Some people, depending on how they react. So if somebody's like, oh, this... If I can see they've got like a mechanical brain and they're really interested in it, I'll let them in. But if somebody's just really enjoying the moment and they're speechless and they have no idea, I won't be forthcoming by saying to them, actually, I had a mirror. Sorry. Yeah. I'll just kind of leave it there.
Well, I think that like an example of somebody who probably walks that line between doing real and magic would be David Blaine, because
100%.
I look at like he's standing on a pole or whatever for 40 days with no food or water, and I'm like, okay, you can't do that. The body cannot. You're gonna die if you do that. And so, but there's all these like discussions about, is what he's doing really, is it just a stunt? Has he learned to hold his breath for 17 minutes? And then it's like a borderline. Well, maybe some of this stuff he does, but can he really be in an ice cube for days on end or whatever? So I think that, but I think he plays it as like he's really doing these stunts. But to me, these have got to be tricks. No,
so this is the thing. He really is doing like the breath hold, the standing on the thing. This is what I think Blaine's the best living magician, because he obviously the card tricks.
But this is what like Houdini would do this kind of thing too. These stunts, these really crazy stunts, and he was actually doing them. But there's no way he can stand on a pole for 40 days without. Well, no,
he was inside a box in London for 40 days. And he was living off
that's what I'm thinking of.
Lemon juice and water. And it was a strict thing that was doctor regulated. And he genuinely did it. Because, for real. And the standing on the pole one, that was standing up for, I think it was like 48 hours on a plinth. That was...
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
But like the breath dive, for example, because he held the record for 18 minutes doing it in the tank. Yeah. But that's been beaten by a free diver. So he doesn't hold a world record anymore. I know he's trying to go back. I think he's trying to go back and take it. But the way they do it is they take in pure oxygen for minutes beforehand. So then it's not just a breath hold. But I think that's why Blaine's the best magician, is because a lot of the things like putting the needle or the sword through his arm, he's putting the sword through his arm. He's just doing it.
That can't. Why wouldn't he just do a trick? Why would he actually need to? I mean, really?
Yeah, 100%. Well, see, there's some people in stunts and circus shows that do that just as a stunt? Because you really can with the finer needles.
Yeah.
You start practicing. You put it through the part of the hand.
I remember
that
like
hasn't
Jim,
been-
I think it was Jim Rose's freak show circus. And that was really crazy. He had a whole bunch
Yeah.
of people who did these kind of things.
Well, that's it. But I think the genius behind David Blaine doing a lot of these things for real is that when you can't, it's very hard to argue that if he does some card tricks and he does some mind reading tricks and then he sticks a real sword through his arm and regurgitates frogs that he's really swallowed, it's hard to say that it's, he blurs that line so well, and that's what he wants to do. That's the goal, to blur that line, to create a legend for himself, somebody superhuman.
I think the one Penn Jillette has talked about a lot, I don't think he cares much for him, is Chris Angel. Because I think Chris Angel kind of leans into this, I am really magic.
Yeah. Yeah. Some magicians, other magicians love. And there's some magicians where, I'm not saying it. I've had like zero interactions with Chris Angel. I haven't really watched any of his stuff, but some magicians look at other ones and they think that they're everything that's not good about. And I suppose you probably get it in your field of work as well. There may be people that other people say are just hacks and they're taking from them.
I'm the one called the hack, yeah.
Oh, right. That's the hacksaw, right? The hacksaw.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's funny. So what would be like, how are people learning magic? I mean, historically, I would imagine you would like apprentice or something, because if you're not supposed to be, or is everybody just like coming up with their own illusions? How does all this work?
There's a few different avenues that people sort of begin at. The most common story, and it's my word, and it's the one that I find the most, unless it's like the Bader-Meinhof complex, but it seems to be that a grandparent teaching a child and giving them the spark that inspires them. And that's most definitely where it happened for me. And the old rule of thumb, would be that you go to the library, take out magic books and learn magic there. And that's where a lot of these like archaic views of you shouldn't teach magic on YouTube comes into it. Unfortunately, you maybe 1 in 1,000, but you're not going to get a 10-year-old who's interested in magic to go to the library instead of going on YouTube where they can see it done right in front of them. They can see, there's things you can't pick up in a book, the timing, the beats, the positioning of some stuff, the body. And when you watch it in a video, suddenly it's really, really easy to digest and understand and start to replicate yourself. So the old school guys would say, go to the library and read books, and that's the only way you should do it. And if you learn it from YouTube, you're not a magician in their eyes. But then you have somebody like Shin Lim, who has a Vegas show. Mm-hmm. He's super, super famous megastar in America now. He learned magic from YouTube. That's his starting point. So, it changes with time. And this is why I'm okay with YouTube, is because it's just the library of the future. It's no different to the library, except
it's just a different form of media. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly right. 20 years from now, it's going to be the Apple Vision goggles. I learned magic, or I learned woodworking, through my Apple Vision hologram bedroom slide. I don't know.
We're all going to be using. Yeah. Well, actually, that kind of brings up the question of technology and magic, and if that's, how connected is that now? I know that there's a lot of tricks I know you have an app for the phone, so you could do like tricks using a phone, which is pretty cool. And I wonder if like AI, is there going to be any AI stuff coming out in magic?
There already is, yeah. Who is it that said,
no
Arthur C. Clarke that said like often magic and technology or science is indistinguishable from one another, and a long time ago, in like hundreds plus years ago, at times magic would surpass technology because magicians were trying to do things that weren't invented yet. Not so much these days, but there are times where somebody will create a method for a magic trick using some technology that hadn't been developed before. And so they go hand in hand, but magicians are very, very cutting edge. You have some very intelligent thinkers. A large portion of the magic creator industry are engineers and scientists, because it sort of ticks those boxes. It scratches those itches in the brain that can sometimes put some people have these brilliant minds and they don't really know what to do with them, but suddenly they get interested in magic and they think, oh, I wonder if my interest and my hobby in hydro science can work here. And suddenly you find a way to, maybe you experiment with hydrochromic ink that can change color with water. And, it finds a way to sort of scratch those itches for their interests and combine them together with a purpose-based goal. Technology and magic's just always gone hand in hand together.
Yeah, I see a lot of that, like on America's Got Talent or whatever. They might have like phone tricks, and I think that's cool that it's because I don't know, we're just so attached to our phones and we know them intimately, and it's just somebody to like fool you using that is pretty amazing.
Well, listen, it's a friend of mine, Mark Kirstein. He specializes in phone magic, and he does a lot of work with David Blaine. And I caught his lecture a couple of years back, and he made some really interesting points throughout the lecture, which was the first one was, so obviously the best magic is done close-up, I believe, and with everyday items, okay? So he was in this room full of magicians, and he said, hands up because coin tricks are very popular. He said, hands up who has coins in their pocket. I don't know. Do you actually have any coins in your pocket right now?
I don't even carry any money at all.
Snap.
So I know that's a terrible thing. I always think about magicians asking for money.
No, because he then goes on to say, hands up who has a phone in your pocket. And suddenly all the magicians put their hands, everyone. He's like, well, phones are more common now than coins. And coin magic is like, 30%, 40% of all magic. The other thing that he said was, there's a lot of plots. We're going back to that word, plots in magic. One of them would be, for example, to take a book and think of any word in that book, right?
Yeah.
Well, he said, you're walking around, maybe you're in a bar. Who's going to pull out a book in a bar from your pocket? Right. Very rare.
Yeah.
But everyone can go online and everyone can pick up a website, open one up and think of a word there. So phones are just sort of like the natural progression that are just replacing a lot of these props.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. I really like coin magic, but like yourself, I don't carry coins.
Oh yeah. That's a difficult one to do. But how many years did you? I guess we should just kind of go back briefly. Tell your backstory. How did you get involved in magic, and how long did it take for you to devote to sleight of hand before you felt comfortable enough to do that in front of people?
That's a good part of the question, because still now I don't, and at least at the performance,
you don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's a combination of not feeling comfortable and also not enjoying it. I enjoy the creative side of it. To me, it's therapeutic. Like, some people do a Sudoku or crossword or like woodworking in their spare time. For me, I make magic tricks. That's my enjoyment. Like that's what I do to de-stress. I'm not really interested in being a showman. In fact, zero interest. I've been offered TV shows in the past and it was a flat no, because that's not my enjoyment in magic, But in terms of the starting point, my grandfather was in a traveling fairground, and he met a magician in that traveling fairground who taught him tricks. So when I was really young, I had a condition called eczema, which is like dry skin, but it was
Sure.
Yeah, it's quite common. You probably get it a lot with woodworking, right? All the dry wood. So, but mine was really extreme, and I used to have big open wounds on my hand, and they'd be often wrapped in bandages. My grandfather, they said I wouldn't do anything with my hands for a living. Like the doctors and the teachers at school said, like, think about avenues of work where I wouldn't be using my hands. So my grandfather thought it would
Can
be
I
good.
just say, whenever somebody at some point says, you'll never do this, that's a sure sign you're going to end up doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to say to my son, you're never going to become a millionaire and pay my bills. Ever.
Right.
Yeah. So, but my grandfather had the idea that, because my hands weren't getting the motor use, like I weren't training basic motor skills, like how to hold a pen, he thought that if he could interest me with magic tricks, that it would be irresistible for me to not want to practice when my skin was, it'd be like good weeks and bad weeks. And if I had a good week, I'd pick up a coin and I'd try to do coin rolls or coin tricks. And so that was the bug. And that actually really helped because I, got these fine motor skills, almost without egotistical, but like, more dexterous than the average Joe on the street. And then I got into that, and I was into sports, dip in and out of magic. And one summer I was injured and I couldn't do any sport. And I made up a trick and I put it on the internet. This is 2004-ish. I was 15, 16. Like it was filmed on like potato quality postage stamp video, 3 pixels on the entire screen. I put it up online, and someone messaged me about how impressed they were, this older magician, how impressed they were at the method that I'd created. This person had been in magic 60 plus years, never seen someone do this trick this way. And as an offhand comment said, maybe I should consider it as a career. Thanks, goodbye, take care. Boop. And I had a summer of no leaving the house, and I was obsessed with now thinking maybe I could, and that was 19 years ago. So yeah, it just sort of that's the storyline really.
What are the biggest challenges with creating tricks? Because now you create these tricks, these illusions. You just call them tricks, right? Is that fair
tricks.
Enough to just say
tricks?
Tricks?
Yeah, I'd say tricks. Yeah.
Okay,
tricks.
Yeah. And that you sell these online. I was looking at some of these. It seems like they're on a couple different websites. Other companies, I guess, sell them. Like you've got one called Lux and Dex, and there's one website that looks like it was made in like 1997 or something, but it's got a lot of your tricks on here. What are the biggest challenges to creating these in such a way that you can actually make money off of this?
So I'm really fortunate that I'm one of a handful of people that around the world that is, very successful. In relative terms, I'm not David Copperfield as a billionaire on an island, but to be very successful financially through doing this, and the struggles it wasn't always this way. So the last 2 to 3 years have been the best years of my life in my professional career. And it wasn't always this way because like the struggles of it are, for example, I'm very fortunate that pretty much every trick that goes out with my name on it is like considered as a bestseller. So it sells like multiple thousands of copies, and and that was all I ever wanted at first. Because obviously if you create anything, you want people to appreciate it and massage your ego. The downside comes to it is that magic isn't a like there's not a, what's the word I'm not, there's not like one average ability level to magic. And as you were talking about earlier, right, a lot of the tricks that I create have a combination of sleight of hand plus the technology. Now the technology,
so you already have to be pretty skilled to use them.
Yes, in many variants. So sometimes the trick will be you have to be physically skilled with it, but sometimes you may have to, some of the tricks that I create, you may have to have you have to be a good have good presentational skills. Some of them involve like mental maths. So somebody will name a card and a number, and you've got to do some quick maths in your head whilst entertaining. So you have to do it subconsciously or attempt to.
Oh, there's no way I could do that. No, I'm out.
Well, that's where the apps come and do it for me. Yeah, I'm terrible. So what the struggle that I found is that I create these tricks for myself. I don't create these tricks to sell to people. They always start off as a trick that I want to perform and show people. And then my sort of rule of thumb is that if enough of my friends hear about it, like magician friends, and ask me, can they do it themselves? Can they buy it off me or whatever? That's sort of like my green light to say, all right, well, maybe I'll offer this to the community. The problem comes is the ability levels of some people, and I mean this with like the utmost respect, some people aren't able to do them. But of course, when you spend money on something, even when it has the advisory, this is not suitable, or, this is an intermediate, intermediate level ability trick. A lot of people will go, well, look at it, they love it. It may be 3 days into magic, they buy it, and then they leave a 1-star review because they didn't read the advisory or they didn't expect it. And
yeah,
when it's your own art, or, I say art in the loosest terms, when it's your own work, and then these people, because you know what it's like. I don't know if you know the consumer world very well, but sure, sometimes it can be brutal to have people tear down your work.
Yeah.
And, so it's that double-edged sword. That's the struggle, I think, mostly for me.
How long does it take to develop one of these commercially available tricks?
Certain ones, like that one you mentioned called Lux, I developed.
See, this looks like is this your most popular one, Lux?
It's up there for sure.
And can you describe that too?
Yeah, so this was one of the ones that I developed all about science and technology, a magic pushing at technology fit. This is one of the only ever things that I'm like super proud of, because we developed brand new technology for it. And what this does is that it allows you to, if you know what UV ink is, right? So it allows you to put like a UV mark on, say you draw a UV cross on a dollar bill, or somebody writes their name in UV ink. It's a tiny UV keychain pen light, literally the size of a AAA battery, goes in a keychain, and you can shine it on the UV ink and show, hey, there's someone's name written on a dollar bill. And the trick is, it allows you to make that ink in slow motion vanish and then appear in slow motion, super visually, somewhere else. And it's like, for me,
it looks amazing. I've seen that. Yeah, it looks like it's a video trick or something.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's one of the ones that, like, for me, out of all the things I've created, it looks like the most realistic. You know, it looks like real life CGI.
Yeah.
So that process was really hard. I was working for an American magic company a good couple of years ago, and I decided to quit there. Wasn't happy there. And it was the pandemic. And I remember thinking, oh, my wife was pregnant, and her job had closed down because of the pandemic. So I had no income. She had no income, and she was pregnant. And I was like sitting out in my garden at night. Wow. Like, what am I going to do here? And I literally seen a shooting star. And at the same time I seen it, I had this idea for the trick called Lux. And almost every single part of it in my head, and it's one of the only times it's ever happened. Normally it's not this, but it's one of the only times ever it was like, oh, I know this is going to be the best trick I'll ever make. And from that moment to the moment it hit the shelves was maybe 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Start to finish, which, you know, if it was like the car industry or, you know, the computer industry, you say, well, technology is 3 or 4, 5, 6, 10 years in the making. But for a magic product, like, that's quite a long time. On the YouTube channel, I try and come up with the idea, film, edit, and do the thumbnail all in the same morning. So I'll wake up early, and then I'll start work at 9 a.m. and I hope to have everything uploaded by midday to 2 p.m.
That is really, that's quite a fast production cycle you've got going on.
It's really, really, really intense. I do it all myself. I've slowed down a little bit now over Christmas.
I would imagine it's very satisfying to see your tricks performed, because it seems like it seems like when you buy a trick that you're going to everybody's going to use it differently. You get the basic trick, but it seems like just an infinite amount of ways you can present it. And that's kind of the fun part of it, I would think.
Yeah. It counteracts all the people, I say all, but, you know, they say like directors only focus on their bad reviews. For every 1-star review that I get, you know, I get like 30 messages of people showing me how they've done the trick their way, or just saying that they enjoy it. And it's soul food. You know, I try my best, especially with my age, like, to not have an ego, but it does like feel good to see that. I think more than anything, it's like it helps you appreciate other people, because if you get excited about one particular element of an idea and somebody on the other side of the world writes to you and you've never said that's the part of it that you like, and they say, by the way, I like this specifically, and you think, oh, do you know what? We could be on the other side of the planet and we are in tune with each other. That's my, you know, you're my person. I know we're on the same wavelength. And there's something comforting there, you know?
Do you think, I'm sure you've seen The Prestige, the movie.
100 times.
It's so good. But do you think that happens a lot, twins? Is that how we explain a lot of tricks? So for instance, one of the most common tricks you'll see in a stage presentation is the magician is on stage, boom, he's gone, and then like a second later, he's in the very back of the auditorium. And my mind just goes to like, oh, he's got a twin. He has to have some way of getting back there so quickly. Or maybe it's not a second, but it's pretty quick. So I don't know. Maybe he just runs really fast under the stage or something.
Well, this is where what were we saying earlier? Where I can't remember what it ties in something we said earlier. It's escaped me now, but using a twin is like the easy way out. Like any magician can use a twin, right? But the magicians,
assuming they had a twin.
If they had a twin, yeah, I'd have to get like Jack Black in a cheap mohawk so he could be my twin.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But any magician can use a twin in theory, makeup and special effects. But the magicians that other magicians love are the guys and girls out there that say, yeah, we could do it with a twin, but let's find a different way. Maybe they have a trolley under the stage on a massive bungee cord and they lay on their back and it zooms them in 0.36 seconds to the back of the auditorium. And they cover it in the hallways or something creative. And the magicians that other magicians love are the ones that do that, even though they could do it with twins and it'd be way easier and way more effective. They choose to sort of level up because they're passionate about trying to find new ways and things like that, So the answer is yes, some use twins, but the really good ones don't.
So there's a lot of that in magic. Then you're trying to make tricks to kind of appeal to other magicians in a way.
Yeah, I certainly do. For the longest time, the only people that I used to travel in 1 year, I did the circumference of the globe 4 times, just going to magic conventions and working with magicians and creating alongside them in like South Korea and all these crazy places. And because the only people I was basically having any interaction with was magicians for like those, I think it was like 5 to 6 years, I was just designing tricks to fool magicians. And the problem I found is that the rare occasion, that became like my my arsenal of tricks. For that year, that 6 months, I had those 5 tricks in my head everywhere I went. And the problem was, they would be fascinating to magicians, and I would show them to a layperson, like a muggle, and they would be so bored they would fall asleep. And I'd be thinking, oh, but do you not appreciate the fact that I didn't use that slide? I used a different slide, and I was thinking in my head, and they could not care less. They just wanted to see me pull a rabbit out of a hat.
Yeah. Well, that kind of brings up a question. Are there any like tricks that you just think are overdone at this point that they probably just need to be retired?
Oh, yeah. It's funny because Blaine does like the same 2 or 3 card tricks and he's never really changed them up. And yet he takes them on. Yeah. Like the 2-card Monty one, where they switch places in the hand and the one where the card jumps to the top. Magicians call that ambitious card. Mm-hmm. He's done them on, every TV show 3 or 4 times each. But he seemed to be the exception to the rule because, I don't think he should change them up, is what I'm saying. But there's definitely tricks that I feel are outdated or some that I just can't bring myself to watch, no matter how good the performer is and how well they do the trick and whatever new approach they bring to it. I could love it could be a friend of mine doing it, and I'm going to zone out because I can't.
You just cringe, like, oh, not this again. Huge. I think the one that comes to my mind is a variation on like 2 big acrylic boxes on stage, and you've got a person in one and appears in the other, or something like that. I don't know. It just seems to me like and one thing that kind of bothers me on like a large stage productions like that, and this is kind of, I really like David Copperfield, but one thing that always bugs me is that sometimes it's hard for me to actually see what's going on. And I know that's probably part of the distraction element, but there's like so much stuff on the stage that sometimes I'm like, wait, what am I supposed to be seeing here? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's when you're up close, when you see a close-up magician do it, then you can appreciate the stuff that you wouldn't necessarily see on screen. I'm racking my brain to try and think of what's the trick that I just cringe when I see it. But I think you might be right. I think it might be that putting a girl in a box and then you just see that a girl or a guy in a box, or a member of the audience sometimes goes in a box and they end up And I just sort of like, I'm just away and not interested. And I'm sure that's my own, I'm missing out some great new ideas by magicians, but yeah.
Well, see, I get the feeling that whenever somebody disappears in a box, they're just like contortionists. They just have a way of like squishing into a really tiny space underneath the box. Or something.
Yeah. Or like the Octomom had like octo twins, one of the octuplets, and they could only do the trick 8 times because they're crushed and just put in the trash. Tiny.
So there's our tips for magic. 1, become a twin, and 2, become a contortionist. You've got it made. If you had to pick a trick that you think looks really complicated but is like super easy to perform, is there something like that?
Yeah, I won't say how it's done.
No, you don't have to say how it's done. But
there's a trick it's called Out of This World. That's the name of the plot. Okay. And the plot, there's also a nickname for it, or a phrase that people say, and it's the trick that fooled Winston Churchill, a British politician during wartime in the UK. Sure. Yeah, globally famous historical figure. Mm-hmm. And the trick is you hand somebody a shuffled deck of cards, and they deal face down 2 piles, and to their left or right, whatever they fancy, they either deal what they believe, and they try and guess is the black cards, and to the opposite pile, they try and deal what they believe is all the red cards, but they're doing this with a shuffle deck face down. So they eventually end up with 2 piles of cards, and they've dealt them at random. Left, right, left, left, right, all the way through. And you take the 2 piles, or the person, you don't even touch the cards at all. They take the 2 piles, turn them over, and spread them, and they've done it perfectly. All the black cards and all the red cards perfectly separated. They dealt them. The magician really never touches the deck. From the moment you hand them the cards, they deal. And when I first seen that trick, just the concept of that trick alone was like boggling. And then I watched a magician do it, and I was even more blown away by it. And this is one of those, when I was a kid, I just sat there. I had no money, no income. I just watched this trick over and over. And eventually I clocked what the method was. And it's just so easy that if you don't know what it is and then you learn what it is, you would try to kick yourself in the back of the head. But I performed that trick maybe.
Well, everybody listening to this is going to be Googling it right now.
Do this. This is a good exercise that I do for magicians that come to me wanting to learn how to make their own tricks. Go and search for that trick. So like Out of This World is called, but maybe don't search for the name. Like search the red and black card trick, and watch a performance video of it. You might see somebody like I'm trying to think. There might be some magicians performing it, maybe to like a celebrity on a show or something, right? But don't watch how it's done. Just watch the trick and try to figure out for as long as you can how it works. And, the secrets are out there. There's no escaping it. If you finally give up, or if you do think you know how it's done, then watch a video explaining how it's done and see how close you were or how incorrect you were. And but if the trick impressed you at all and you have no idea how it's done from the first viewing, when you finally discover the secret, whether it's off your own back or seeing it, you will just be like, wow, that was crazy. Because I had that for sure.
That's so cool. So simplicity rules, huh?
Absolutely. And that's given too much away to the method. But I've done that trick maybe I've realistically done that trick maybe 1,000 times. And
wow.
No one's ever I do an advanced version. So I put psychological tricks in place that stop them backtracking it. But no one, even the most basic form has ever figured it out.
Wow. There's something to the more time an audience member can spend with holding the cards and doing and examining and all of this stuff. There's just something that's so cool about having that reveal come. I was at a magic show. I think I told you about this in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and I got to be on stage. He called up some people, and it was a close-up deal he was doing with some dice. And so he would take like this cup and he'd cover up a whole bunch of dice and then scramble them around, and they'd all be stacked up in whatever order he wanted. And I think he was really doing it. I think it was like, I don't know. I don't think there was a trick involved, or I don't know, but it was pretty cool. But it was so cool to just be that close, sitting there with like, there were like 4 of us sitting right at this tiny table, and to be able to so closely watch what he was doing. And man, I didn't detect anything. And then he did some card tricks. And one of the things that was interesting about Penn and Teller and reading one of his books is that he's got a force card, the 3 of clubs.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about this or not, but that's his. So whenever he's doing a trick and you see that somebody draws a 3 of cards, you know that this is his card. And it's funny because he went into this whole business about how he picked the 3 of cards or 3 of clubs, that it's the most humble of all cards. It's not as low as the 2, and it's not and it just, this whole reasoning of why he uses the 3 of clubs. But I think that was kind of cool too, to just have that special, it's almost like an Easter egg or something to audience members in the know.
If you know, you know. My favorite card is the 6 of spades, and I tattooed it on the inside of my finger.
Nice. And why the 6 of spades? Any special significance?
Well, right. There's this sort of like secret magic club, invite only, called the 52. So 52 magicians around the world get invited in, and just it's
number of cards in a deck.
It's 51 of the best living magicians and me. And you all get to choose your card. So my favorite card was the 7 of spades, because that was the one that I seen David Blaine change the King of Hearts into in his Peugeot advert at the cinema, which sort of reignited my love for magic when that went out in 2006-ish, some whatever time. So I went to choose the 7 of spades, but it was taken by a friend of mine. And so 6 is my lucky number. So I changed it to the 6 of spades. And that's the least interesting story you'll hear all week.
Well, I like the finger tattoos. Does that come into play with sleight of hand as like, does that help, or like a little bit of distraction or something?
I don't know. Do you know what? Like, I get some really horrific comments on YouTube from people who hate my hand tattoos, but my grandfather was in a traveling fairground, and for me, like, those hand tattoos, they're not, for me, it's not more about style, but it was always, I knew that I was never gonna be able to do like a job. My brain isn't. My wife, right? She loves lists. Like, she writes a list, and that's her happy place. She writes a list for how she cleans the house. She writes a list for what she's going to do next week, because her brain works that way, and she can handle it. I can't. I'm not like a paperwork person, or I can't think. I have to be creating. And years ago, I remember like school teachers and stuff would say to me, like, you've got to get a real job. And certain people would say, and it was almost like an act of defiance to have hand tattoos, because it was like, well, if you have these hand tattoos, you'll never be offered a job and it's almost like, well, I tell you what, I'll put them on myself, and then I can't have a job, and I almost like force myself to. Maybe it's a bit silly. I'm not the most logical thinker out there, but in terms of often I find I don't like the guy who goes up in a party and says, watch the magic tricks that I can do, and wants everyone to fawn over him. But if it comes up in conversation that I do magic as part of my living, and somebody's really interested and they want to see a trick, and it's not a big show, then I think it's quite a nice interaction there. You're just sharing with someone. And sometimes like the hand tattoos can lead into that conversation. And it feels a lot more organic instead of being that show-off type. If somebody does want to, if they are actually interested, they'll ask to see it. And this is answering your question. The thing that I'm sick of seeing the most, the trick that I'm sick of seeing the most, is the one that the magician forces somebody to watch. The magicians that go up and make somebody who's not interested, or they're busy, or they're in the middle of a breakup with their partner in a restaurant. And you can see this magician come over and just force them to watch magic tricks. And you think, oh, no, dude, read the room, please. And I never, ever want to be that guy. So there are times when I really want to perform a trick because I'm working on it and it's new and I got to iron out all the wrinkles. So if I can edge the conversation that way, sometimes by them seeing a playing card or some like mystical symbols or codes on my hands. Sounds a bit silly, but
Nice. No, I think that's cool. Do you carry a deck of cards with you everywhere just in case?
I don't. No, I don't. No, I try to challenge myself mainly by asking. Like, so if someone asks me to show them a piece of magic, I'll just say, okay, give me like any two objects. And then I'll think on the spot of what
that's pretty. I think that's kind of better in a way because it's so spontaneous and it's their stuff.
Yeah, and they feel like it can't be set up. So therefore, when they try to work it out, they know that I didn't prepare it, and it cancels out the method. And
what would you do if I came up to you and we just met? Well, obviously, if I knew you, and I said, show me a trick. And you said, well, give me two things. And I look and I have nothing. I don't have a coin. I don't have cards or anything with me. I have maybe a credit card. That's like the only thing I carry is like a credit card and my ID. Could you do a trick?
Yeah. With a credit card. Yeah, because a lot of the tricks that you're going to do with these objects or like the mental tricks you can do without any objects at all, you're leaning on your past knowledge. So if for example, if I was, a little bit about magic, right? Obviously, you know what a color change is. All right. So if you handed me two cards, like your ID and your credit card, and as I'm saying this, you're probably figuring out the motions in your head of what I'm doing, but maybe I would put one in my pocket and I'm doing bunny ears here, and I would hold on to the other one. I would make the other one change visually into the one that was previously in my pocket. And then I would retrieve the one from my pocket. So they look like they've transposed places, which is just really a card trick dressed up with your objects,
That's so cool. I wish I had that kind of ability. I mean, it just seems like the ultimate bar trick, to just like randomly come up and have people do that. I don't know. Before we go, get a little philosophical here. What is it about magic? Why do people like to be fooled? Is it that they like to be fooled, or is it they like the mystery? What is it ultimately that keeps drawing people for centuries to magic?
Apparently it's the oldest or second oldest profession, isn't it? One of them. That's what they say. I think there's many factors as to why it's continues to be one of the, not the major three arts. I think there's three. What is it? Like singing, dancing, and comedy. But it's in the top 5 to 10 major arts. And there's lots of reasons why. Like, one way you could look at it is if you're one of those people with an analytical brain, it's like being given a crossword or a Sudoku. It's an entertaining puzzle, and there is an answer at the end. And that answer is like an escape room or anything like a riddle. It kind of gives you that dopamine hit when you finally figure out how it's done. So for some people, like myself, I suppose I'm in that category. It's the therapeutic exercise of using your brain and being given the reward of you were correct at the end. For other people, it's entertaining, and it's just you see these restaurants where you have these chefs, and they, like the Japanese chefs, that chuck and juggle the knives and things. People love those restaurants. You very rarely hear people talk about how good the food was. It's just right? It's just that experience. And for some people, just to see somebody who's a master of sleight of hand, even if the trick doesn't fool them, the experience of watching just a master at work in any field, a master craftsman, a master poet, laureate, whatever, just that experience of seeing somebody who's dedicated their life to an art form, for some people is good. But there's a magician, and I heard him talk about this, and I think this might be one of the reasons why people love magic in particular so much, right? Because they say it unlocks a feeling that no other art form can. So music, comedy, dance, and it's this feeling that you cannot think of anything else. The moment you see the trick and your brain experiences the magic, you can't think about your troubles. You can't think about your worries. And one magician, I think his name was Eric Mead, talked about even trying to use this in therapy, with Pavlovian conditioning, right? Because the moment you see this trick, right? Say the moment you turn those two piles of cards over and all the colors are red on one side, all of them are black on the other side, and you've been the person that's dealt them, you cannot, in that moment in time, you cannot be worrying about your taxes, right?
This is so true.
Because you're engulfed by this feeling. And what another amazing magician, Paul Harris, wrote an essay called The Essay of Astonishment. And he says that when you're a child, everything's fascinating. A cup is fascinating. The cardboard box is more fascinating than the toy. And as you get older, these objects and these things, these happenings, the sound of a bell ringing for the bus to stop, they suddenly become mundane and boring and understandable. And as you grow, you build these bricks around you from all these understandings. Even the TV, when my kid, like last 2 years ago, was fascinated that the person was fitting inside a tiny flat, because it's real wonder and astonishment. But as you get older, you build these bricks around you. And by the time you're our age, you're in this dome of an igloo filled with these bricks, and you understand how every brick works. And suddenly someone comes along and they drop a coin through a glass bottle and all the bricks fall down, because you've suddenly two things that and you've understood from the day you were born almost to right where you are now. Suddenly you've shattered the foundations, and it's childlike wonder. And that feeling of childlike wonder and that like feeling of, you can't experience that in any other art form. For some people, it could be really, and this is why I don't like, if somebody's not asking how it's done and they're just in the moment, for some people, it can be like a really spiritual or powerful sort of experience. For example, like that red and black card trick. Some magicians will phrase that as trusting your gut and letting your instincts guide you to deal into the right piles. And people turn over and they've made every decision right. And these people could have been going through traumatic events or been worried that they made the wrong choice or they don't know what they do. And even though it's a card trick, it's a card trick with a method, they feel like they've been empowered by that and they can have some confidence and gusto going forward. And I've really seen more than a handful of times, people watch a mundane, in our eyes, simple magic trick, and it have a profound impact on them.
Yeah, you see people cry sometimes at magic tricks.
Many times. Yeah, many times.
Yeah. Lloyd, congratulations on all of the success with your magic tricks you're creating, and your YouTube channel is fantastic. Everybody ought to check it out.
Same to you too. Your channel's incredible, man.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.